How you doing, guys? This is Ed with Shuttertastic. I'm with Jeff with Lytro, and we're actually going to talk about a specific camera that is nothing like anything else in the market. Jeff, pleasure, man. Why don't you walk us through what Lytro is all about?
Well, Lytro is based off a concept called light field technology. Basically what light field does is takes the angles and direction of the light instead of just the photons. Because of that, you have an extra level of data that you're able to do things that you can't do in a normal 2D photo. You can change the focus, you can change the depth of field, you actually can export and show your images in 3D. So every image you take without doing anything separate is available to you in 3D.
So, I'm sorry, so let me get this straight. After you shoot the photo, you can literally change the focus, or is that what I'm hearing?
You've heard correct, yes. So it's more than what you would think, though. It's not just changing the focus. Some people think, oh, well, I'm never going to take a bad picture then because I can always fix the focus. Well, that's possible, but the real creative potential is as a photographer looks at an image and composes in 3D instead of in 2D, there's a whole different layer that's available to them. When you play back that image, not only can you interact with it and change the focus and change the depth of field, but you can actually take advantage of what we call perspective shift. You're creating a 3D kind of an environment. And like if you show it on an iPad, for example, you'll see a perspective shift using the accelerometer. And so it's a completely different dynamic experience.
Yeah, this is, I'm literally trying to imagine, that's insane. So after you take a photo, how's the size file afterwards?
So it's a proprietary RAW file format. So all the things that you would normally do with a RAW file format you can do. Change the white balance, tonal saturation, etc. It's about 52 megs for one file because it's a very high resolution image that's taking in a lot of data that allows you to do all those different manipulations after the fact.
Oh, 52, that's awesome. But just the fact that you could do so much afterwards, I mean, that's really not that much at all.
Well, no, it's not. As an example, one of our great features is what we call focus spread. Think of taking an image that has different points that you want to have in focus and then others that you want to have out of focus. Normally you have to manipulate that with your focal point and a depth of field. And you're going to hope that the depth of field kind of matches up. Because we have an entire range that we can basically manipulate, you're able to identify the items that you want to have in focus and those that you don't want to have in focus. We call it focus spread. You're spreading the focus in the area where you just want to have in focus and everything else is a beautiful bokeh.
That's crazy. All right, so we have a setup here. Is there a way that we can show briefly to our viewers what this camera can do?
Sure. Not only does it do all the things I just mentioned to you with 3D and everything else, it actually is amazing macro. So in a typical macro environment, you've got a very shallow depth of field. You've got to get it right on. We actually help you extend that, but we also give you the ability to manipulate and run through the depth of field. So let's take a wedding photographer in their typical shot with the ring embedded in the rose. Very hard to get the ring just right. But maybe you want to actually take that image with the cake in the background. You could actually show the cake first in focus and then animate into the ring and have only that in focus and then pull back out and everything else is back in focus, okay?
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, you got to understand the depth of field that you're shooting in before you even take it. So you have to think a little bit differently. You have to compose in 3D.
You have to think in 3D instead of 2D spacing.
We know that's not that easy sometimes, so we've built in a little help for you. It's called the Lytro button. When you press this, so we're in live view right now, and if I click any place on this, you'll see that the focus is changing. But let's say that I want to optimize my refocusable range. So I press the Lytro button, and what it does is it puts a pixel overlay on top of your live view. It now shows me the items that are in the foreground and the items in their background. And what I'm wanting to do is to optimize all the items that I want to have in my refocusable range afterwards in either blue or orange. Pretty easy, color by numbers, and you just get as much in the blue by and orange as possible. When I have that, then I know that I've got a very deep depth of field, and I can work through that in a refocusable range after the fact. So when I take that picture, then I review it. Let's see, we're gonna go horizontal here real quickly. You'll see that the dynamic range here you've got the ability to click in here and change the focus, and runs through the different areas. I didn't take this picture, so I don't know how well they know how to do this stuff. So you can see quite of a depth of field here. This is very, very close to us here in a macro environment, about mid-range. The black line signifies where the actual focal point was. Items in orange are items in the background. Items in blue are in the foreground. So I can click on this and change my focal point, as well as clicking any place on the image itself. Now, that's just for you as a photographer to understand, once you've taken the shot, did I get the depth of field right? There's a lot more you can do in the software, which we can show you in a second. So not only can you do all these things with Lytro and with the Lytro Illum, the camera itself, from a physical perspective, has some very unique capabilities. First of all, it's a fixed f2 all the way through the range, so it's a very fast lens. It's also a 30 to 250 millimeter zoom range. So that 8x optical is actually more than your kind of the industry standard in the Canon L series. So you got twice the zoom range, and it's twice as fast, because that's an f2.8. Now, there's nothing wrong with that L series lens. It's perfect, hasn't changed in 20 years. But if you compared the weight and the cost of that lens to this one, it's very different. We're able to take out a lot of the pieces of glass that you normally would have, because we do a lot of the actual work with software that's normally done with glass. And so between that and the software capabilities, it's a very light product. So it might look really big with this lens, but it's because it's a 30 to 250 millimeter zoom. If you had that in a normal lens, it would be much bigger and much heavier.
Right, I mean the 70-200 f2 alone is huge, so heavy.
Exactly.
And that's not even counting the camera that you're using with the battery grip sometimes, right?
Exactly. And that lens by itself would cost you $2,500. The entire camera, including the lens on this, is $1,599.
So as far as battery is concerned, I know this uses up a lot of processing power. How long does that typically last?
That's a great question. When I was at Photokina, I used mine from Monday till Thursday, never recharged the battery.
Shut up.
and it's using the live view. It's a 4-inch LCD.
Yeah.
But you also don't have a massive autofocus engine going on in the lens either. So it's actually a very power friendly. Yeah. We use it we term it about 400 shots is what the battery life is.
Oh, okay.
Software.
Obviously, this camera is a lot. We're just showing you guys the actual camera itself and the actual features of what the camera can do. As far as software, this is a totally part two, basically. Let's go ahead and check out the software side.
Right.